Hello, teachers, and welcome back to ELT in Brazil. I'm Bruno Buquerque. This is my partner, Walter Curti. And today we're joined by two other teachers who have taken the Delta here with us. We've got Mike Turner and Will Travers. I'm going to introduce Will. Will's been teaching EFL for over 10 years in countries including the UK, France, Russia, and Australia. Currently based in Japan, working at university level and for the British Council in Tokyo. He recently passed Delta Module 1 and submitted his Module 3 assignment. Wow, I wanted to have submitted my Module 3 assignment as well, specializing in ELT management. Welcome, Will.
Yes.
Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome, Will. And teachers, this is Mike Turner. He's been teaching for over 10 years in Japan, specializing in young learners. That's very interesting. He has worked as a teacher trainer, heading a custom designed TESOL prep course, as well as a university lecturer in Tokyo. He holds a CertTESOL qualification from Trinity College London and has completed modules 1 and 3 of the Cambridge Delta course. He's also certified. He's also certified Microsoft educator and a graduate of a range of young learner training courses. He's currently working for the British Council in Japan and in Tokyo. Both of them actually, right, Will? Both of
Yeah,
them.
Mike's my line manager.
Yes,
That's
they
nice.
work together for the British Council in Tokyo. That's
We
awesome.
do indeed.
Thank you for thank you for participating in this series of videos that we have. And today we're going to talk a lot more about the experience of being a Delta student. Yes, shall we begin? We have some questions
Yes.
prepared. Yes.
So, roda a vinheta and let's go.
Well, I think that the first question that we should ask, this is about the feeling of, okay, it's time, I should do this. This is the next step. I'm ready for Delta. When I'm gonna start with Mike. When did you feel ready? Like, okay, I gotta do this.
Uh, I think it was probably about a year ago because I did my CertTESOL maybe 5, 6 years ago, and then just didn't get back onto it. To be honest, I wish I had have just kept going and done the diploma straight after the cert. Um, but yeah, hearing from other people that have done the course, it didn't seem like it was something I wasn't ready to do. Just a
Hmm.
commitment, especially with the time, especially when you
Oh,
work in full time. Yeah.
yeah. And did you struggle with the time because it's just so much reading to do?
Module one was nice because luckily we did it around this time, was when I started. So I had about 3 weeks where I just stayed home and read. I think I was reading between half to an entire book a day and just taking notes, just staying at home and reading. Module one wasn't too
Wow.
bad. Module three, that was more of a challenge, especially because you have to get all of the research in, as you well know, Walter.
Oh yes, oh yes. We shared a lot of notes for Module 3, even though we were doing different
Yeah.
specialisms, right? But yeah, we shared a lot. Will had a different one, right, Will? You were
Yeah,
doing the
because I
manage.
did ELT management. So yeah, similar structure but completely different stuff. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And Will, would you tell us about your experience for Module 1 when you felt ready? Same thing.
Yeah, I think similar background to Mike, where I'd done my CertTESOL years ago. I'd been working consistently in TEFL, but then working in Japan, they tend to be a lot of these operators where they've never even heard of CELTA, let alone working with people who've got them. So you get out of that mindset. Though I've been working hard at this school, doing various things to improve myself. I left the job and went home to the UK for a while and spoke to an old colleague there who was like, come on, Will, you know you're ready for it, you know, it's time. And I was like, yeah, but I'm out here in Japan. I can't do it. And she's like, I did the distance delta. I'd never even heard of it before. And you know, a conversation with, you know, another friend in teaching, and just sort of looking at where I wanted to go in my career, and it was clear that, you know, delta was the next step. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to get into ELT management or teacher training. And then submitted my application pretty soon after that.
Yeah. So I think, Will, you kind of segued into our next question, which is why did you want to take the Delta in the first place? So you mentioned that you wanted to get into teacher training and management at schools. Was that your main goal with taking the Delta?
Yeah, I believe so. I'd already known in the past that, you know, you couldn't get onto like CELTA training courses without having a Delta. So it was one that was definitely, I had my eye on it in the past, but like I said, it had just fallen by the wayside. So I realized it was time to refocus. And I had the perfect opportunity, a fresh slate this year. I could go into a new job in Tokyo surrounded by like-minded people, like Mike, for example, that would, you know, really push me in the right direction for getting it done.
Well,
Yeah,
you
support's
didn't
very
actually
important.
know each other at that time, did you?
No.
We met on my induction day,
Ah.
and I just shook his hand and said D group.
That was the one.
And I was
Yeah,
there, right? We had our induction day together, and I think Mike was in my group, or was it Will? Was it you, Will? I think it was you, right? 'Cause, we immediately started a WhatsApp group, even though they tell you not
that's
to,
right.
really.
Yeah. But then I mean my actual British Council induction day.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, when we met face to face for the first time, I just said D group, and we hit it off from there. It was like a
All right.
secret signal that no one knew what we were on about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
What
didn't
about
equal at
you, Mike?
all. Why to
Why
take it in
did
the
you?
first place?
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, it's for career progression for one. There's a lot of stuff on the Delta, especially Module 1, that isn't always relevant to your practical teaching, especially for young learners for the first module. But yeah, basically to sort of progress in the company at British Council. It's also good to start getting the qualifications in while I can. So I figured like this, I've got about a 2 year space where I can get this done, because sometimes it's just not possible, you know. Luckily, I don't have any commitments like children at the minute, so I have the time.
Mhm.
But now seemed like a good time to get it done. Hopefully, this will be useful for things like university teaching later on. I have taught at unis before without a master's degree, but for me, depending on the university in the UK, the Delta will actually count towards part of a university master's. So I can take some of that.
Well, that's something
Yeah.
we didn't know. I didn't know. Did you, Bruno?
Oh yeah. For Nile, for the master's courses in Nile, Norwich Institute of Language and something,
Maybe.
the E, I don't remember the E, but it's a third of the master's degree.
Yeah,
But
Like
could be
you
okay.
quite a chunk
you
of credits.
yeah, it's a
I believe
huge chunk.
60 credits.
It's one
Depends on
third
the
of the degree.
Yeah.
If you're taking a master's degree in language teaching, it's a third. There are 3 modules, and you skip the first one.
But I mean, if you want to teach at a university level, so that does make a difference as well.
uh I mean, when I was teaching before, I didn't need as much of the stuff that we talked about on the Delta, because again, it was lecturing to large groups of maybe 80 students, so that you're not going to as much detail. But it's definitely, especially for the course books and course design and testing design as well, because we have to make our own tests. That was really useful. So reading big chunk of Hughes on testing was always helpful.
Oh yes. Yes, that was very it was also very It's interesting, and it's something that we hardly ever get in touch with. We don't usually have to read about those things. And being a teacher in Brazil or anywhere, I would say, if you're an EFL teacher or an ESL teacher, you hardly ever need to write those tests because they are institutionalized. They prepare everything, and then like you never get to know those things unless you take something like the Delta. So yes, very useful. Bruno, I guess we can move on to the next question.
I would like to ask you the question, Walter. Why
Oh,
did you think about taking the Delta in the first place?
okay. To me, it was right after the Celta because I wasn't satisfied. I mean, I was satisfied. I loved the course, and this is interesting because Mike and Will have the CertTESOL. We say TESOL here mostly, but in England they say TESOL, right?
Yeah, I guess it mixes between some people say TESOL,
Hmm.
some people say TESOL.
In Canada, that they say TESOL as well. Interesting. In Brazil, people say
Didn't know.
TESOL, but I was like, I want to know more, and I also, you know, kind of a link between the first and the second question. It had to do with the fact that I do want to become a Celta tutor. So I
Same.
knew it was the right step to take, which is the same that Will mentioned. And you, Bruno?
Same. Being a Celta tutor is one of my career plans. And I knew I wanted to become a Celta tutor right after I took the Celta because it was one of the most transformative experiences I've had. It was an amazing course. I had amazing tutors. I was very, very lucky. And quite in sync with what Will was talking about too for career advancement, right? So that you can rightfully become a teacher educator and work with school management. I believe that not only the qualification, but the skills you end up developing throughout the course are very important for uh, moving from a proficient teacher, from an experienced teacher to a proficient and conscious teacher and head teacher or coordinator, for that
And
matter.
and I mean also because like you, if you don't take this kind of course, let's call it that way, even though you have to remember that the Delta is not a course like the Celta, right? It's a prep course for a test for Module 1, and Module 3 is an assignment, and Module 2 you have to teach lessons. They're very different. But where else would you be asked those things? So if you want to develop career-wise, you do need the knowledge, right? And I think taking Module 1 prepares you for that, right? Along with
Mm.
the credential that you get.
Oh
Cool,
yes.
cool. Mike, Will, anything to add?
Well,
I'm
All
there.
right.
um,
Okay.
yeah, I'd definitely say that the module one, if anything, it kind of feels like a diagnostic test for teachers. It just, it really highlights what you don't know and things like, oh, I've never heard of this. What is a bilabial plosive? So it really makes you think, I need to study this. I didn't know how you guys did it, but even before starting, I just got hold of as many practice tests as possible and just went through and was like, wow, that's it's quite a lot of stuff I don't know here. Even after 10 years, there are things you just don't think about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, what's a consonant cluster, or it's when it comes to pronunciation, the things you learn when you're studying for the Delta, it's crazy, man. And also for assessment, there's a lot of terminology that you're just not used to, such as backwash, wash back. Those things is yeah, and it's fun to learn those things.
Yeah. I know it's not the aim of this video, but maybe we can talk about that later. But to me, the jargon for pronunciation seems overly technical, doesn't it? When it comes to to testing jargon, for example. So achievement test, diagnostic test, formative, summative, washback. These are terms that actually carry meaning into the classroom. But then when you get to bilabial plosive, and then why don't you just tell students that you go buh? That's pretty much it, right? But
then
well,
you'll be
that's
left with a task about the use of meta language in the classroom. That's paper 2, task 3. I think we had that in a mock once.
We did.
It's a very good point. To what extent can you do it? And of course, it all depends on the teaching context and the actual. Even if the students have a high level, they might not even know about even adjectives and nouns in their own language, as is often the case. So just easier to go but.
And
right.
you were not gonna use oh, this is a simulation. Progressive regressive assimilation. You don't need the meta language. Yes, I remember that mock paper 2 task 3, right?
Yeah,
That was an interesting one. Well, moving on, Bruno, do you want to ask the next questions?
Okay.
Yeah.
Which type of prep course did you guys take? Was it an intensive, a face-to-face, an online course?
Online, distance, Delta. So everything was, for us, it was done with the online tutor. So we both had
Slick
Slick Rick and Cell, yeah, doing that, and then we had different tutors for part 3. For me, the main thing was just I couldn't take time off work. You can't really take 6 months off to do it. And with COVID, it actually kind of worked a little better. We had a lot of time to just stay at home, so you could do that then.
I mean, for you guys, do you think that taking the online version, we took it together, but in your opinion, do you think that it makes no difference, or do you think that it actually does in terms of taking it face to face or online, from one prep course at one institution to the other? What do you guys figure?
Well, I think for module 1 and 3, I think it's probably easier to do it online, or doing a distance course, because effectively module 1 you're just preparing to take the 2 test papers. We managed to band ourselves together pretty quickly, so you always had that moral support there with the WhatsApp groups and the forums. And then module 3 is it's an independent research assignment, so you don't really need to be around other people, because they might be doing different specialisms anyway. So that's the one where you're sort of doing all the hard yards on your own.
Yeah, I definitely agree. One thing, it would have been nice. I know Cambridge tutors are very busy, but more time with the tutors, I think, would have definitely helped. For example, sometimes, for example, going over that pronunciation, plosives, and so forth like that. I'm looking at the terminology, I'm looking at the definition, and I still like, how is this? How would you use this term? How would you explain this? So having people to bounce things off, like Walter, me and you would spend quite a long time, like sort of calling each other or just sending each other voice messages. And like, what is this? What are we talking about? Having support like that, I'm lucky, or we're all kind of lucky that we had each other to do it. But I know some other people were very much just on their own, and then that really showed when we did the group talks. Some people were just like, I still don't know.
This is actually another reason for somebody out there thinking about taking the CELTA or the Delta, is the chance to build up your networking. You get to know other teachers who are doing and going through the same phase as you are. Otherwise I would have never met you guys, right? And we've become such good friends. We've been studying together for a year.
Little did I think that in February 2023 I'd be sharing a Brazilian guy in Istanbul doing an intensive module 2 course, but that's the way it goes.
Oh yeah, that's the way it goes. So Will and myself, we're gonna be sharing an apartment in Istanbul, taking module 2, the intensive one. So this is gonna be a different experience. Now we're gonna go for the face-to-face one. Mike, any plans for module 2?
Yep, I'm submitting my my form for that this month. It'll be the online one again for me. Again, just because I can't get the time off work. But yeah, that's gonna be finishing up next year, so 2024, around end of November. So it's gonna be another year or so for me.
Bruno have some things to tell you about the module 2. He just finished module 2 and he did the extensive version as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I pass. I think I did, because it takes so long for the results to arrive. I finished the course. It was I think it was early December. I think it was December 2nd. And I'm only getting the results on February 17th. So I think I did a good job. I really liked my last lesson. And the thing is, you get feedback for the first 3 lessons, but then for lesson 4, which is externally assessed, you don't. Right? So you have to wait on Cambridge results to know if you're passed or not. It was a very intense course. It's that there's as you folks were saying, it's a lot to read, it's a lot to write and rewrite. There are lots of drafts that you I think for LSA 1, for the first article you write, you get 3 drafts, and then 2 drafts, and then 1 draft, and then an outline for lesson 4. So it's a lot of writing and rewriting. And actually the teaching part of it was, I don't mean to sound arrogant, but we've been teaching for quite some time, right? So we know what we're doing. So the actual teaching wasn't scary, but the writing and the planning is, in my opinion, where the heavy work is. Right? It was a very interesting course.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, we do have one more question. Will, you mentioned that you might have to leave a little earlier, and in that case, we understand, and you just tell us.
It's all right. We can keep going. I think I've got enough time to get to the end here. We're all right.
All right.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about, other ways, like apart from the course, what other tools did you use to prepare?
Well, it was a bit of advice you gave me. I got going on module 1, but like module 1, there was no prep at all. It was almost like the sign up and the start date were like within a week or so of each other. And I was getting into the input reading, and I was struggling to just sit there and get it done. But you recommended the Natural Reader, the narration app, and I ended up, actually paying for the app, downloading all the input reading so that I could listen to it as I was going through my day. And that made a big difference, because you could just keep going back over stuff. And maybe I'm more of an auditory learner, I don't know, but that helped stuff just stick, as opposed to sitting there, almost like tears falling on the page, wondering what I got myself into. So that made a big difference for sure, and I would highly recommend that to people who are always on the go, but maybe don't want to be sat reading a book, or can't be because they're driving or cycling, for example.
Oh yeah, and then it's just so many definitions that you really have to memorize them. You have to remember, and that app did help me too, right? A lot. Mike?
Copyright, distance, delta.
Yep.
Because
I mean, very much like Will. So yeah, Will sent me over the files for that, and we're listening through. Was pretty helpful with the audio reader. Unfortunately, when it comes to the pronunciation section, it just reads or sentence stress. It just reads it as is.
Yes.
But yeah, I used Memrise a lot. Quizlet I thought was good as well, but Memrise was quite nice. just kept doing that over and over. Task 2 for paper 1, writing the definitions. It's only 12 marks, but that I spent a long time on. So literally just writing definitions in a notebook and just filling a notebook full of whatever. Anytime I came across a word I didn't know, I write it down, and then I just have to keep practicing. Flashcards that I made myself. So just constantly like going over these on the train. I used
Quizlet.
I used Quizlet a bit, but it just, for me, like, it got kind of a little bit boring. I was just sort of like going over and over.
Okay.
Memrise, it's a little bit more interactive, and you can actually see, where you are ranked in the world for that set. So, like, I think currently I'm still the world's number 1 on one of the sets because I just spent so long doing it. Yeah, it was pretty long. Aside from that, I was lucky. Like, I think, Will, you had like a week for sign up. When did you sign up for it, Will? When was the start date?
I think it was back end of February because I was still in the UK at the time.
Something like that. Yeah, I missed the December sign up for module 1 by a couple of days. So instead, I got hold of a load of the input reading and all of the books and just started reading. So by the time we started, I'd already done about 60% of the book reading.
I don't believe it, really.
Yeah, I just sat and read books and just made, like, all of these notebooks behind me are just stacks of notes.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that you had like a lot of notes, and you actually posted something on Instagram, and there was just a lot of things there. Like, I remember you had just so many notes that maybe you could make up a book out of those, right? Right, Mike?
Well, I kept everything, and what we've done at work now is all of the module 1 and the module 3 stuff. We've actually kept it in the office because that's one thing. A lot of the other teachers who want to start Delta, they don't know what it's going to be. So now a lot of people are actually going through before they do the course, so at least they're ready for it. Because like very much like Will, the input reading was pretty substantial, and there's not a lot of time on module 1. They just go.
Well, there's one more thing that I know Will did it because that's an idea that came from you, and I copied it, which was voice recording. I recorded, like, I got all the definitions that we had, and I put them on a paper, and I'm talking about, I don't know how many pages, but it's just, I don't know, 500 definitions maybe. So a lot of pages, and then I recorded my voice reading these definitions in a way that I would, because I spend a lot of time in commuting to work. So it was like something like, this is a test, blah, blah, blah. And then give it like 2 seconds and then say what it was defining. So I'm listening to it in the car and I was like, oh, this is a test, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, it's that. And then my own voice would come out and say, oh, it's that. It's annoying, pretty much. Like, I don't like the sound of my voice, so it's kind of annoying. But it helped. It really did, right? So, especially for task 1 and task 2, if you're worried about those, then yeah, it does help. Bruno?
We've been talking about intensive exam preparation, right? So techniques that we use when we have the exam, like very close on the horizon. I would suggest if you haven't registered for the exam yet, and if you're planning on taking the exam maybe next year or in a couple of years, extensive preparation also goes a long way. For example, going to teachers' conferences, watching webinars, reading blogs about ELT, and then you will learn stuff and everything regarding ELT. If you move away from the trends, as in multiverse and 21st century skills, perhaps, and focus on the core of English language teaching, it will definitely help you in the exam whenever you choose to take it. So don't skip those as well.
Bruno took a different approach to module 1. because he did take the like a prep course, but then he waited, studied a little more, right, Bruno?
Oh yeah, I took 3 prep courses. Yeah.
Yep.
I had
No
no
hurry.
intention of taking the exam when I first started studying for Delta. I had just finished Celta and I knew I wasn't ready. So I found this inexpensive prep course to take and then just help me organize my reading and my study. And then I took one online prep course, and then I took a face-to-face prep course in São Paulo. In the company I was working for, they were offering the Delta Module 1 prep course face-to-face. And for employees, it was free of charge. And I was like, why not? Right? Might as well take it.
Yeah.
And then I paid for Delta 1, 2, and 3 all in one, and then I took the course, the test. Right. So it took me, I don't know, maybe
Sounds
2
very
years
safe,
preparing.
right?
Oh yes, it was.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There is one thing that we didn't mention in the previous videos. Mike, I'm sorry, you were gonna say something.
I was just going to ask you guys something because I found this a shock because everything's handwritten on the test. When I was doing my practice test, I was handwriting everything, and you kind of had to exercise your hand to get ready for that because for me there was just not enough time to write down as many points as I wanted. And I remember in the test just being like, physically, almost I can't write anymore.
Yeah, task one, part five, task five, paper one. Sorry, that is just like you gotta be
Yep.
so fast, right?
And paper 2, task 3. So
Yes.
you're right at the end of it as well. And again, going back to meta language in the classroom, or in our test, what was it about? Drilling.
Was it? Yeah, it was drilling. These
Drilling,
effects or
drilling.
uses of
Yeah.
drilling.
Yeah, so then you're constantly, coming up with all these different points, and at the same time, your
About
arms
80 bullet
absolutely
points.
knackered.
You're just like stopping, like
Yeah,
can't stop. I have to keep going. Let's go. That's
Oh,
one
but
good piece of advice. If you're going to practice for module 1, write it on paper.
yeah, and I think another thing is, we were
print it
recommended
out.
this as well. You don't have to do the tasks in the written order. You can do them in any order that you want. So I think, for example, paper 1, it was a case of, right, do tasks 1 and 2 quickly because it's either you know it, or task 1 because it's terminology, you know it or you don't. And then go back to front, go 5, 4, 3, 2, because that's where you want to get as many marks as possible as quickly as possible.
Yes.
And the same with paper 2, I was recommended look at task 3 first, just to get an idea of, right, what am I going to be up against here, and then you could go and do maybe 2, 1, 3. Though for me, paper 2, task 2 was something I had a lot of trouble with on the prep course, so I didn't have the confidence to do it first. I did task 1 first because I felt I could do that much better than task 2.
By the way, this is something we didn't mention before, Bruno. If you take one like the course that we chose to take, which is the distance delta by International House. If you enroll for the test and you pay for the Cambridge fees, and then let's say, oh, okay, you're going to take the course from February to June, and then in June you sit the test, and if halfway through the course you're not feeling confident, you can push that date, right, and then take it in December, if I'm not mistaken. Is that accurate, guys?
I honestly don't remember. I mean, I know you have to pay the Cambridge fees to the testing center, but yeah, you don't have to take the test. You can just take another test later. I can't remember if Rick was telling us or not, Will, but I think he did say to me once, like, even if you're not ready, just take the test, and it's good practice.
Yeah, and it's it's if you're lucky, you
right?
pass.
Your tutor will let you know if you're doing well, right?
I think module 3 is one where it's more likely that you can defer. I mean, I was doing ELT management. There were only about 5 of us in the group. In the end, I think only two of us submitted. I think one bloke's still waiting for his part 2 research to come back, and the other two, I didn't even meet any some of them in any meetings, so I have no idea what happened to them. But
No.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's one more question I wanted to ask you guys, Bruno, to you too. Out of all the tasks in paper 1 and paper 2, 5 tasks in paper 1, 3 tasks in paper 2, which one was the hardest? Which one was the easiest?
For paper 1, thinking about it back now, I mean, excluding task 1, because that kind of is the easiest task, even though the terms or you don't. For me, I think for getting points, like getting points on paper, it's got to be task 5, because it's a lot of just like, okay, for example, what is they? Use that, and you're just listing off parts of speech, things like that. That's an easy way I found to get points. And I remember in the beginning, I got very bad feedback from my tutor because I didn't know how to do that for the test. So that was the easier one for me. The harder one, I think it would be the writing the definitions, because it's only 12 points, so you don't want to spend too much time. But a lot of my definitions that I wrote, even some of them were almost word for word from the textbook. And sometimes the tutors were like, needs to be more precise. I'm holding up the book like it's exactly.
I did not answer that in my paper. I didn't
I
have
just
time.
skipped it.
I skipped it. Like I went out, just like Will mentioned it, like 1, 5, 4, 3, 2. When I got to 2, no time. It's just like ran out of time, nothing to do, like no way. But I still felt good, like, oh no, I think especially because of task 5, there's so many marks there, and you got to collect those. And as you said in task 5, it's just that okay, what is they? And then most people think, okay, it's a pronoun, but what kind of pronoun is that, right? And then you can write, like, seriously, you can write 4 things about one word, but you have to remember those, right? And
yeah,
it's still a challenging one. Will?
I agree. I think yeah, paper 1, task 5 is the most accessible one where you can really rack up the points. However, I really struggled with paper 2, task 2. I think I mentioned it earlier. So there was a time where I got like 9 out of, I think it's 42 points on that in a mock, and I was just like, oh gosh, and I was recording possible again, recording, contextualize the target language and all these phrases to use, and really, getting it in my head, doing all the mocks the day before, and lo and behold, I got a distinction on the day. So something must have gone right there. But
It
it's
probably
tough
did,
because
because that's
but as a
42 marks
task
there.
though, you end up writing what they're doing, but really you're supposed to be describing why they're doing it, not describing. Remove that. Saying why they're doing it, and it just took me a while to really get to grips with that.
It's an interesting task, by the way, and paper 2, task 2, the one that you are pretty much assessing materials, right? So first you have to define what they are doing in such and such exercises, and then you have to combine why is that exercise here, that exercise there, why, how are they linked and connected. And then in task 3 you have assumptions from ELT based on that. And it's just such a difficult task. I remember Will and myself, when we were preparing for that, there is a specific language to be used, because it's not just about knowing how to do it, but you have to know how to write this stuff, right? It's very interesting, and if you're thinking about taking the Delta, I think this is one of the reasons why you have to take a prep course, right, Bruno?
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a specific genre, right? And I think it goes for all Cambridge exams. It's a specific genre. There's a way of answering questions, of the way of writing and organizing your answers in bullet points, etc. Yeah. Walter, I think we have a wrap for today.
I do.
Don't we? Yeah.
That's
So
great.
I'd like to thank Mike Turner for being with us, and Will Travers. Thank you very much, folks, for speaking to us from Japan. I find it very, very funny that it's dark outside here and it's early in the morning for you folks. Time zones are interesting. So thank you very much for coming.
And
Thank you,
Very
guys.
much.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
mates, just like thank you very much for participating in this series. We really appreciate it. Hope everyone out there watching this video also appreciates it.
Yep. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.